Here we are again. I said I was going to do another one of these soon, and here I am, this wee hours of the morning. I'm going to try to get through this as quickly as I can because I'm tired, and I've also been drinking today, so not too much. Whatever. Let me. Why are we here? I'm doing a tired review of the Netflix TV show Jupiter's Legacy, which I have to admit I really liked a lot. To get into some backstory about this show, it is based on a comic book miniseries of the same name. It it was a comic book miniseries written by Mark Miller, who has had a lot of his stuff made into either movies or TV shows. Most notably, he's the guy who wrote Kick-Ass, which was the basis for the movie Kick-Ass, Wanted, which was basis for the movie Wanted, The Secret Service, which was the basis for the movie Kingsman, and I think there was something else, but I can't remember what. I think he's had some of his other stuff optioned for TV shows or stuff. Honest to God, in recent years, ever since he started having so much of his shit made into movies. Oh yeah, he also he did a comic book for Marvel's Ultimates line, called the Ultimates 1 and 2, which basically wasn't the complete basis for the first Avengers movie, but definitely heavily influenced it. Like, he created the Chitauri and everything like that, so you can't deny his influence on the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Not to mention, him and Brian Hitch, their work together, basically is what turned Nick Fury into Samuel L. Jackson. You know, you see a picture of what their version of Nick Fury looks like, and it's just like, oh, that's Samuel L. Jackson. They actually even say it in the comic book. There's a point in the actual book itself where members of the Avengers are casting who would play all of them if they made a movie about the team. And he actually says, you know, Nick Fury says, of course Samuel L. Jackson played me. It's like, yeah, of course, they literally drew you to look like Samuel L. Jackson. So yeah, there's no denying Mark Miller's influence on movies, and in recent years, basically a lot of his comic books have become to look a lot like rough drafts for pitches for movies or TV shows. Like, he's not even bothering to just make comic books that could be good enough to be made into movies or TV shows. He's literally just making comic books as an excuse to pitch them as TV shows or movies. And you can see it in his writing because he's become very impulsive, and his writing lacks subtlety, which brings us into my review of the show, because the show doesn't have that problem. The show is actually way more subtle. It's got 8 episodes to play with it. It plays with it better. It drags out the story a bit more in a way better way. It doesn't just jump right into things, and it even changes a few characters. So what is this show about, you might ask? Well, it's a superhero show. Jesus Christ. It's a superhero show. It's, it kind of takes place in 2 different generations, and that's very much what the show is about. About a merging of 2 very different generations. You have the first generation of superheroes represented by a group called the Justice Union, which was founded in the late 20s, early 30s. And by the first generation of superheroes, which there were originally only 6 of, the Justice Union is very much supposed to be sort of like the Justice League, with their leader, a guy named Sheldon Sampson, who basically is just their version of Superman. He's just very much got Superman-esque powers, and he's the most powerful superhero on Earth. The other members are made up of his older brother, Walter Sampson, who becomes a superhero Brainwave, who has psychic powers. Then there's Grace Kennedy Sampson, who is who starts out as in the show. She's a reporter who Sheldon meets, who you just find out later become, like I said, it takes place in two different times. It takes place, they're telling the story in the modern day while also telling the story in like the 20s, setting up the story of like how these guys went from just normal people that were dealing with the issues in the 20s. Like they show like the Great Depression happen, and Black Monday specifically, and then it tells a story about like what eventually leads to them getting their powers and becoming superheroes. So yeah, Grace Kennedy Sampson, who becomes Lady Liberty. Then there's George Hutchins, who is Sheldon's best friend, who becomes a superhero called Sky Fox. Then there's Fitz. I forget his name. I forget his last name. Fitz something. Who becomes the superhero, the Flare, who probably has the biggest change from comic book to TV show, considering the comic book he's a white guy and the TV show he's a black guy. In the modern age, that might not be too big of a distinction, but like coming from the 20s, that's a dude who's dealt with very different things. And then they even eventually meet this doctor named Richard. I don't think they even gave his last name, who becomes the superhero, the Blue Bolt. And like I said, they become the Justice Union, which is like this world's version of the Justice League, as the name suggests. The background story of what's happening in the past is it shows how it deals mostly with the Sampson family. Actually, the whole show revolves pretty much around the Sampson family, and it deals with Sheldon, who his family owns a steelworking company in New York, and it's run by his father, with him and his brother working for their father. And it starts just before Black Friday, about how they're trying to expand their business, and the brother, Walter, warns, he's like, now's not the time for expansion. The economy only looks good, but things are shakier than they seem, and now's really not the time to do this. So we probably shouldn't be expanding the business now. But they ignore him and they expand the business anyways. And then Black Friday happens and they lose, or Black Monday happens and they lose everything. It's so bad that their father literally jumps off the side of the building and kills himself. Then they find out they're basically losing the company too, because of their father's bad financial decisions and the economy tanking. Then at the funeral, that's how Sheldon meets Grace, because she writes a story about how their father made really bad financial risks and bet the company's pension to do it, to expand their business. And considering that the stock market fell through and they won't be able to expand, they eventually just lost the entire pension plan, which means they can't pay their employees anymore. And so yeah, what am I talking about now? Oh yeah, so then Sheldon starts having weird seizures, and then he starts seeing his dead father in visions, and he starts drawing these weird drawings. And at first, everybody thinks he's just losing his mind, except for his best friend George, who starts looking at the drawings and realizing there's some kind of recognizable pattern to them. And at first, Sheldon seems to get better at first, but then he looks at the drawings again, and then he has another seizure, and he starts seeing things again. Then he goes on this weird journey across America because he's looking for, like, he keeps seeing visions of like a windmill and a house and a young boy in a sailor suit and everything. And he finds this farm out in the middle of nowhere, and there he meets this guy who used to be in the Navy. And when he's in the Navy, he talked about how in the middle of the Atlantic, they just came across something weird, something that he couldn't describe. It was like a storm, but it was like it was like whatever it was, it like followed them. Like it kept moving, like it was chasing them, and they couldn't avoid it. And it basically killed his whole crew, and he was the only survivor. And he managed to make it back to land, and that's why he was living out in the middle America, because he didn't want to be anywhere near water anymore. And he said that he kept hearing some weird noise now, some weird like high-pitched hum. And he ends up killing himself in front of Sheldon. Sheldon like freaks out at first and is almost ready to run, but then he looks that there's a storm cellar. He goes into the storm cellar and he finds the guy upstairs, like his family was dead and they were all posed around this table. And he sees he all of a sudden has a vision of all these people, himself included. He sees himself, his best friend George, his brother Walter, the reporter Grace, and this other guy, Fitz, and this other guy who he doesn't recognize. Oh yeah, Fitz and Fitz's father worked for Sheldon's family. That's how he knows them. So then he sees these weird coordinates, and he realizes the coordinates are somewhere he's supposed to go. He finds out they're in the Atlantic, so he starts collecting all the people he needs to get, except for Richard, because he doesn't know who he is at first, and he, talks him to go out on a boat, and he finds the boat, finds the captain, and they go out, and they sail out in the middle of nowhere. They find Richard. He's the only survivor of a similar situation to what happened to the Navy guy who shot himself. He's the only survivor of a shipwreck. They were doctors who were traveling abroad to help people. They have some issues on the boat where they all become convinced that Sheldon is crazy and they shouldn't listen to him anymore, but then they run into the storm. But they manage to go through the storm, and when they come out the other side, they find the island. That's what they're supposed to be looking for. So Sheldon takes the people he saw in his vision onto the island, and the island seems crazy. It seems to be wooded at first, and then they see a desert coming up. And then all of a sudden it starts just out of like trees start popping up out of the ground when they try to leave, and then it starts snowing, and just nothing about this island makes sense. And they just keep going on it until it seems like they pass through to a place into another planet. They come to this weird wall and they all start fighting each other, but then they become convinced they have to work together, and they manage to open up a portal in the wall that takes them to another planet, where they then find this weird thing, I guess is the only thing I can call it. It's like a weird structure, a weird alien structure, where they each see like somebody who they knew in life who's now dead, somebody they all wanted to see. Like George and Sheldon and Walter see their father. George sees his mother. Fitz sees his grandmother. Grace sees her uncle, and Richard sees his good friend. In the comic book, Richard is a closet homosexual, closeted because of the times he lives in. he's not allowed to be openly gay. It seems like in this show they're making subtle hints that that is the same, that his character is also gay. And then they get powers and these weird costumes, and they head back to the boat, and then you see how they're back in the modern world, and they're now fighting crime as superheroes. And they decide to form this group called the Justice Union, and they have to decide what they want to do with their powers. And, basically Sheldon, who's the leader of the group, sets the rules like, okay, it's very simple. We don't rule and we don't kill. Like, we're not going to decide how things work for the government. We're just going to help people, and we're just going to, stop people from hurting other people. Which is kind of a weird place to draw the line, because it's like, governments can hurt people, laws can hurt people. Like, who are you protecting? Like, who are you decide who's being right, who's being wronged? It's a weird distinction to make. It seems like more like you're just deciding to protect the status quo, no matter who that harms. But I don't know. It's strange. But that is something that gets addressed, because now we come to the modern age. In the modern age, we're dealing now not only with these heroes, it's the same heroes, they're all much older now, but because of their superpowers, they're either aging slower, or age just doesn't affect them as much. They all kind of have like some level of super strength, they can all fly, and they're all like pretty fast to like different degrees. Obviously, like Sheldon, who plays what the fuck is his superhero name? The Utopian. He plays the Utopian. Who's played by Josh Duhamel, who I've only ever seen in a few things, and never really thought of him anything more than just like a fucking one-dimensional pretty boy, but he's actually really good in this show. I gotta give him props. He comes off with a very Superman appeal in this show. I think in a different situation, he probably could have actually played Superman, because he definitely, he sells it pretty good in this, because he's definitely supposed to be a Superman-like character in this show, though obviously older. Somebody refers to him as a sexy Santa Claus in the show, and it's like, it kind of fits. That is what he looks like, because in most of the show, he's got like long white hair and a white beard and everything. And he's still married to Lady Liberty, Grace. And like I said, the show revolves a lot around them and their two kids. Chloe, their daughter Chloe, and their son Brandon, who is now Brandon's operating as a superhero too, also a member of the Union. And his superhero name is Paragon. Chloe has opted out of being a superhero. She's just like, she basically is like living a spoiled rich girl lifestyle. She's like like a model, and she does drugs and parties and is just reckless. And but she does have powers. Brandon and Chloe both have powers like their parents. They can both fly. They have super strength. They're invincible. Brandon neither can shoot laser beams out of their eyes, though, their father makes it sound like they'll eventually be able to. Or at least Brandon will. Then there's the Brandon Chloe's uncle, Sheldon's brother, Walter, who the superhero known as Brainwave. He's the psychic of the group. He can basically enter everybody's mind except for his brother Sheldon, who's too powerful for even him to control. Since then, the Union isn't like what it once was. Most of the older superheroes seem to be gone. Only Brainwave, Utopian, and Lady Liberty are still members of the group. The Flare, who's Fitz, he's still around, but it looks like he was in some sort of accident or bad fight, because now he's severely scarred on the side of his face, and he's in a wheelchair now. But he does still have his powers. He had the ability to project like energy as his beam of light. So I don't know. They haven't said what happened to Blue Bolt. And Skyfox is basically seen as a traitor to the team, and he's now like he's considered the world's biggest supervillain. They even said that at one point he took the vice president hostage, which is something that happened in the comic books too. Though oddly in the comic books they were willing to free him. Like I said, there's a lot of things about this show that are different from the comic books. Basically, the crux of the show is it's an old generation versus a new generation, where you have this old generation that decided on a way to do things. They decided on a principle of how to do things. You know, they earned these powers, and then they have to decide like what is going to be the principle of how they use their powers. Though it just seems like it's one guy who decided for everybody, and everybody else just went along with it. And now that one guy is still trying to decide for everybody, but now you have this new generation who didn't have to earn their powers. They were just given to them. But now they're being told what they're supposed to do with them. Like, they don't decide for themselves, but now they're questioning it because it doesn't seem like the rules really work as well anymore. You have villains getting more vicious, getting more dangerous, sometimes even killing people, and because they have a rule against killing, you have all these young heroes who are getting more and more restless about it. The show doesn't do that great of a job of presenting like why it's such a dangerous thing that they shouldn't kill, but it is a hard thing to demonstrate. They try to, though. Like, they have this one superhero who gets killed trying to take down a villain, and Lady Liberty eventually stops him, and she almost kills the guy because she's so pissed. There's this one situation where they're fighting this really dangerous villain named Black Star, who has like an antimatter heart that basically he can use to like blow up and like almost like a nuclear bomb. And at one point he was going to kill Brendan's parents, and so Brandon like just hits him so hard it collapses his face and kills him. But then they find out it's not actually Black Star, it's like a clone of Black Star, and they have to figure out who sent it. But this also brings up an issue of like, you know, Paragon, Brendan, has been raised to believe that like killing like this is wrong, and his father's furious with him for killing in the first place. And you can see that nobody thinks very highly of Brendan because he just seems kind of like a fuck up, and he knows his father doesn't think that highly of him either, and he kind of belittles him and treats him like a kid all the time. And like I said, he gets really angry at him for killing Black Star. But it turns out, like I said, it's not Black Star. It's a clone of Black Star, who it looks like who they find evidence that it was sent by Skyfox as some sort of weird warning or weapon against them. Now, while all this is happening, you see Chloe, who has completely rejected the superhero life, and her parents seem to judge her harshly for that. And her life is like a model, and how she doesn't take responsibility with her powers and all that shit. So she just kind of stays away from her family, and she parties like an idiot, and she gets into weird shit. And then they introduce this other character named Hutch. Now, Hutch is, I forget his full name, but he's Skyfox's son. He has no powers. He's one of the few child of a superhero, of one of this first generation of superheroes who doesn't have any powers. But what he does have is this weird power rod that allows him to teleport and answers only to him. And it looks like, from what they show, that the power rod used to belong to Blue Bolt. So it suggests that Blue Bolt may be dead. I don't know. They don't quite get into that. Hutch is basically, he's also abandoned the superhero life. Even though he grew up with a lot of these people, he doesn't really know them that well, and he basically operates with supervillains. He's a criminal because the weird power rod basically gives him powers. Like I said, he can use it to teleport or teleport other people, and it only answers to him. Through it happens since Hutch and Chloe meet, and then they start sleeping together. They basically start dating. She even helps save his ass at one point while he's trying to steal something. He's basically trying to steal stuff or buy stuff from criminals to basically build some machine that he eventually says he admits to Chloe he's trying to find his dad. You think it's going to be some kind of weird weapon, but it's actually he's trying to find his dad. Because he can't find him. Even with all his weird abilities, he can't find him. He even says that when he tries to find his father using this power rod, for some reason, it just takes him to strip clubs. So, so basically you have all these weird things about the old generation's values clashing with this new generation's values. It is weird that all these old superheroes only have kids that are this young. Like they've only been born, like they only seem like they're in their 20s and 30s, even though all these older superheroes have to be over 100 years old now. It's weird. I mean, they all got their powers in like 1929, and they were all adults already, so I don't know. You like the whole thing with the clone of the villain and everything makes it seem like there's some kind of weird thing going on, and then they come up with this idea that maybe they can read the clone's mind, and even though he's dead, they figure out a way to like reconstruct his brain enough and to power his body enough that maybe they can read his dead mind to figure out where he came from, and they recruit Walter's bastard daughter, Raikou, who is a powerful psychic in of herself, and she helps them enter the clone Black Star's mind, and while he's in there, Walter gets trapped. And then he finds basically like a psychic version of Skyfox, making it seem like this was a trap created by Skyfox specifically for him to attack him. And Grace gets sent in by Raikou to help Walter, and she does. And then it makes it seem like Skyfox gives Walter some kind of message, and Walter shows Grace the message that it's basically he's threatening their family. He threatens to kill Sheldon and Brendan. So it makes it seem like that Skyfox is now specifically coming for them. And while this happens, the real Black Star breaks out of prison, and then Sheldon and Utopian and Paragon have to go fight him, and he gets the jump on Paragon and takes him hostage, shows him to his father, and basically is like, you know, I'm using him as a hostage. He's like, and I'll kill him unless you kill me. Basically putting Utopian in a bad situation. Either he has to break his rules and sacrifice his precious principles, or let his son die. Either way, it's a lose because it shows that his code actually doesn't mean anything under pressure. Or he lets his son die, even though his son was willing to kill a clone of the very guy who's threatening his life to save his parents. And if he lets his son die, he'll lose whatever respect he still has among the younger superheroes, who are already quickly losing respect for him and his code of honor. But he doesn't kill Paragon, and oh yeah, Fitz also, his daughter is in the Union, and she has powers just like his. The Flare. That's not what she's called. That's what he's called. But then she decides that she's thinking of leaving because she doesn't believe in the code that they live by anymore. But she still helps them fight Black Star, and that's how Paragon gets away. And then Paragon ends up beating the shit out of Black Star, almost to the point where it looks like he's about to kill him, but then he doesn't. And then him and his father have this weird moment where his father's just like, he wasn't sure. He's like, were you about to kill that guy? And Paragon's looking at it. Brendan's looking at his father like, were you about to let me die? And it's not quite sure where these two stand. In the end, basically, what you find out is that where it all seems so different from the comic book, because I said the comic book is way more impatient, it jumps right into things right away. And presents, basically that there's a lot of tension between Walter and Sheldon. And in the past, it shows that there kind of always has been tension between the two of them, that they don't always see eye to eye. This takes its time with it, does it more subtly, and you reveal in the end that this whole thing has been set up by Walter all along. That he created a clone of Black Star. He made it seem like it was George who created everything. He created that fake image for Grace to make it seem like George is coming to kill them. He's the bad guy behind everything, and basically what he's doing is he's trying to drive a wedge between his brother Sheldon and his son Brandon, because he wants to turn Brandon against Sheldon, and therefore turn the younger generation of heroes against Sheldon. Because he knows they already are losing respect for Sheldon, but they do respect Brandon. Or like a lot of people agreed with Brandon. Like they showed that like there was a poll, like 78% of people agreed with the killing of the Paragon or of the Black Star clone, including a lot of police and everything. That a lot of people agreed, like, Brandon did the right thing. And in a certain situation, you could kind of argue he did. I mean, the clone of Black Star was about to, they said he was about to go nuclear, which means he was about to blow up, which means, going nuclear means you could have blown up an entire city or maybe even a state. It's like, how many people would he have killed? It's like, you couldn't kill for just whatever, but if somebody's posing a threat to life, killing them is just an act of self-defense. I don't know. But by the end, you see that Sheldon and Brandon are not in a good place, and that George is planning on taking advantage of that. And he gets confronted with this by his own daughter, Raiku, who basically reveals that she knows his entire plan and says, hey, unless you want me to tell everybody about this. Like, she's a hired killer. So the only reason she comes to help is for $1 million. She says, I'll keep your secret for $50 million though. And he goes, well, I wish I could trust you on that. And then you see in the end that he has basically killed her to keep her quiet, and he's just, playing coy just to manipulate his brother and his nephew against each other, which is the core of the entire story. But in the comic book, they jumped into this real quickly. In the comic book, Brandon was a completely different character in the comic book. He was more like what Chloe was, or he didn't want to be a superhero and he acted irresponsibly with his powers and his life. And the only thing that him and the TV show version have in common is that they both feel unappreciated by their father. The difference is in the TV show, Brandon's actually like really trying to gain his father's approval. He's trying to live up to his example. He just can't. He's just failing at it. Which makes, if it does end up going the same direction that the comic book went, it'll make this whole thing seem way more tragic when it all comes to a head. But that hasn't happened by the end of season 1, so we'll see if that happens in season 2 or sometime beyond. I imagine that it's going to end up being the same, which should make for things very compelling. I do like how they're dragging it out. I do like how they're expanding on the story more. I would like to see more about what happened to the Justice Union in the past and how they broke up. I hope they do that in season 2. But yeah, it's a really good show. I think they kind of abandoned the very fast-paced way that Miller approached everything for a more subtle, like I said, a more subtle approach, and it makes it a way better watch, a way better story. But they still respect the visual influence of Frank Quitely, who drew the comic book. They even have a little shout out to him in one scene where you see a van in the background that has his last name, Quitely, on it. Yeah, it's a good show. It's really enjoyable. It's well paced. It's well written. There is some weird superhero action stuff in it, but it's pretty well done. I like it a lot. I give it 2 thumbs up, and I look forward to the second season. So yeah, I look forward to where this is going. I like the pacing of the story. I like the acting. Like I said, especially with Josh Duhamel, however you pronounce his name. He's probably the most recognizable actor from it. That and the woman who plays Lady Liberty is, I think her name is Leslie Bibb or something like that. She's been in a few things. But other than that, he's definitely the most famous person there, and he does a really good job in the role, so I think I already said that. I'm just kind of rambling and repeating myself now. But yeah, I think that's a long enough review. Jupiter's Legacy, 2 thumbs up. Good show. Highly recommend it. I would say check it out, because I think somebody should. They say it's in the top 10 on Netflix, but I haven't seen anybody talking about this show at all, so I'm really hoping it does get a second season. So yeah, that'll be it. And can't think of any more reviews coming up anytime soon. We'll see what happens. Yeah, okay. I'm just rambling. Time to actually get some sleep. Have a good one, folks.